Welcome to the future where kids are remote controlled by their parents. If that could only ever happen, the world would be a much easier and simpler place. Imagine, sleep. That would be good. Wake up, eat, go to school, do your homework, all at a press of a button. I don't think that's what we're talking about this evening. This is Tonight. I'm Bruce Whitfield. I'm joined by Nikki Bush, who's a speaker. She's an author, and she is of a number of best-selling parenting books, including the soon-to-be-launched Tech Savvy Parenting, co-authored with Arthur Goldstack. She's here to tell us about whether or not we're moving to a big brother scenario with our kids. Great for us who want some more control. Terribly bad news for our children, Nikki Bush.
Absolutely, Bruce. We live with this challenge. Firstly, we need to create independent children who will go off without us one day and be able to survive in a very fast-changing world. They need to be resourceful, they need to be resilient. And now we have technology that's producing an amazing number of gadgets and apps that are increasingly allowing us to remote control our children. And we are already sitting in a risky situation where we have hyper parenting, helicopter parenting, which is already taking away even beneficial risk from our children.
Talk about beneficial risk very briefly.
Okay, so children learn through self-discovery. They learn by doing things by themselves. And if
they survive,
yes,
then it's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yes.
And if we don't allow our children to experience some risk, some pain and suffering in their lives, some frustration, then they don't learn those skills of perseverance and they don't become resourceful and resilient because somebody has always been running interference between them and the world, softening the blow, wrapping them in cotton wool. No, don't climb that tree. I don't have time to take you to the hospital if you break your arm. You know, things like that. So children are increasingly growing up in a world in one room, in front of the family media center, because then I know what you're up to. I know where you are. And therefore, I'm kind of in control, but are we really?
No, absolutely right. I mean, the 5 years ago, the real concern was children weren't children anymore because they were all communicating with each other they were using social media, using SMS and all of that sort of stuff, and they were communicating like this. We seem to have moved on and accepted that this is the way of the world and kids will communicate in whatever way suits them. They'll be sitting next to each other, having conversations with each other on their mobile devices, bizarrely enough, but that's what they choose and it kind of works for them. So we've come to terms with that. We now need to come to terms with the fact that our children are individuals and need an individual path. At the same time, we worry about them. We live in a society that is somewhat challenged and challenging, and in big cities that are scary.
And full of 24-hour news reporting. Now, that is something that our parents didn't have when we were growing up. And we live with the spectre of child abductions, sexual offences against children, you name it. And it might be in one corner of the world or in one town or city today, but it looks like it's everywhere. And so all our fears and anxieties are on red alert. But this, of course, is fertile ground for marketers.
Completely, because you are a terrible person. I don't know what it's called, I can't remember. But if you don't have the wrist device, that's like a wristwatch.
Flip it. There's a flip it or
Philip, if you don't have Philip attached to your child's wrist,
yes,
you are a bad parent because at the press of a button, they can automatically dial the 5 key numbers in their lives. Yeah. You, your husband, the nanny, the security guard, and the Minister of Safety and Security all at once, and somebody will respond and come to their aid. If they don't have it, if they're the only kid in the class without one, your parents don't love you.
They don't care.
They don't care, absolutely.
I think that increasingly we're going to have to take a step back and look at what is being marketed to us and ask ourselves, is it in the best interests of our children, keeping in mind that end goal of letting our children go without us one day. And I think we're going to have to make some hard choices because some of the things coming down the line could be those ingestible sensors that will help you to monitor what your child just ate. Did they have too much gluten, too much sugar, too much wheat, too much what? How about monitoring your child's heart rate? And
the Japanese have got a device because also heart rate is a good signal of whether the child is in distress.
Anxiety.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Or it could just be that they're playing a really vigorous game of football.
Yes, it could be any number of things,
Yeah.
and we could jump to the wrong conclusion.
But we are accepting these devices, one, because marketers are blooming clever at manipulating us, two, because we do live in societies which are more challenging than perhaps they previously were, and three, because we're paranoid.
We are. And paranoia leads to tentative parenting. And tentative parenting does not engender confidence in your children. And your children need to feel confident that you've kind of got a handle on things. But if we're continually putting out a message of the world is a bad and nasty place, you can't trust anybody, and you can't even trust me to be your parent, what are we providing for our children in terms of an emotionally supportive environment?
But also you're expressing a lack of faith in your own kids at that point as well, aren't you?
That too. So it is a fine line. We are going to have to pick and choose. We are going to have some and not others. But at the end of the day, the device, the gadget, the tool that you cannot buy off a shelf is your relationship with your child.
Oh, yeah, this is, if you're a man, I'd call you Dr. Phil right now. No, but our reality, though, is that we sit in an environment where we are technologically enabled. You've written this book with Arthur Goldstack, and you take on these issues, and these are very challenging issues, because what if you are the one parent who doesn't have the fillip, and your child is the only child by a sheer quirk of fate that goes missing at the end of sport one day when you were 5 minutes late because you got stuck in a traffic jam,
Sure.
or whatever the case might be.
Okay, so we go back to the relationship issue. You may well be the parent who doesn't have that item, so you decide your child can't be the odd one out, so you slap one on their wrist because you don't want them to be that child.
The 80s,
Right.
it was
Okay.
Nike Tackies. I mean,
whatever it is. Okay, so you might choose to go with the flow. However, you still need to have the conversations with your children. You still need to have layers and layers of trust built into that relationship. You can't outsource your parenting to devices.
Can't we get the au pair to have that conversation, because we're really busy?
No. Can we please not do that? You can buy in caregiving, but you cannot buy in parenting. There is a really significant difference, but I think it goes back to this conversation that devices and gadgets make you think that you're doing a better parenting job, but what you're actually doing is outsourcing what you should be doing anyway to a technological device.
But that is also, and it's precisely that, where kids can play lots of games on iPads, for example. Parents use these iPads as tools to get rid of their kids. Oh, we can go out for dinner, and the kid can go and sit in the play area, or they can go and sit in the corner of the restaurant, and they're learning stuff. It's not bad. They've got, it is screen time, but they're doing sums. But there's nobody sort of sitting there and going, the reason why it keeps going burp when you go 1 + 1 is 3, it's because it's wrong. Let me try and help you through the process.
Exactly.
We let the computer do it.
So I call it the default setting of the screen. We have used the screen for a long time as the default setting when we're too busy, when we can't be present with our children, when we don't want to engage with our children, go away and do XYZ on a screen. And now what our children do when we're being boring or when we're not emotionally present is they default to a screen because, hey, there's a lot of choice here. I feel empowered and in control because I know how to run this thing. I know how to fly it. My parents don't. So there's a lot there to entertain, yes, to educate as well. Technology in itself is not a bad thing. The internet is not a bad thing.
It's opening up the world in weird and wonderful and, in some cases, mysterious ways. It can be utilized.
It can be, but
as the plow was utilized to prepare the fields.
But would you let your 4-year-old run across a busy road without some kind of adult supervision or guidance on how to do it properly? No, you wouldn't. Now we put our children on the internet superhighway, and we're letting them out there very often with no supervision, no guidance whatsoever. So
and
we
no
do
filters.
need to be there, no filters. And we do need to be there to have those conversations that matter, not the boring sermons about how dangerous it is or how you mustn't do anything, but it's actually about everyday dinner table conversation, in the car conversation.
But how many people are having dinner together?
That's a big issue. That is a big issue, and therefore we come back to parenting and how you parent being an absolute choice. You can parent through technology, yes you can, but you can also parent face to face. We need to find our middle ground between the two so that our children grow up with high touch skills as well as high tech skills. And it's those kids, I think, who have both in abundance who are really going to be the winners at the end of the day.
What role are schools playing here?
Schools are playing an interesting role. There are schools who are complying with Schools 3.0, where they are not just using technology to teach old stuff in a new way, but they are actually teaching in a different way. And that's actually what technology is there for, is to help children to learn in a different way, to help teachers to teach in a completely different way, because this is a very new generation. Then we have a lot of schools still sitting at the bottom, classroom 1.0, and they don't even have textbooks, some of them. Some of them do have textbooks, and some schools are sitting in 2.0 where they have technology, but they're just using it to do the same old thing. It's a different delivery mechanism.
I mean, you look at kids today, at 5-year-olds today. I've got a 5-year-old who's a whiz on an iPad, and now he's going to school, and he says, "Oh, we got a real mouse." I'm like, "You're going backwards, child."
Yes.
You know, the school should be shut down.
Yeah.
A bad school.
So, you know, we have such a broad variety of what's on offer in schools. It's your choice where you send your child. I don't think for a minute that a child who doesn't have access to the top end won't be able to cope in the world. It really depends what happened at home.
Completely.
More than anything.
No,
I think
absolutely.
that's the biggest influencer. I think you will have an advantage if you are operating at school in a way that is similar to the world of business, to the world of work, where you're able to upload and download your assignments onto the internet. You know, that's the way things go.
I mean, I would love a pile of school books this big and this thick. And that feels like the future.
But you know what? I listen to parents whose children are solely on iPads in some of the schools that have gone to the other extreme, where every textbook is on an iPad, where all your notes are kept on an iPad, and the kids are battling to close a screen and open another, and it's very confusing. Like when your teacher used to give you a photocopied comprehension with the comprehension on one side and all the questions on the other, and you have to keep flipping back and forth. This is not easy for children. So while it sounds like it's a really good idea, depending on your learning style, you will or you will not cope with having everything on one device.
Okay, so
and that's
for those of us who travel a bit, FaceTime is good. We can talk to our children,
absolutely,
but don't go away for more than a day or two.
Preferably.
Preferably, okay. And not all technology is bad. It can be utilized for good, but for goodness sake, use your brain.
Keep the human in the middle.
There we go. Well, we'll do that. Nikki Bush, who is a speaker, she's the author of many best-selling books, lots of parenting books, including the soon-to-be-launched Tech Savvy Parenting. She's co-authored it with Arthur Goldstack. I'm looking forward to seeing it, reading it, internalizing it, and then following the rules. Are there rules or are they just guidelines?
Just guidelines.
I need rules. Thanks for watching. There'll be more tonight, tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye.